Hey there, independent Scientologists. Discover a new perspective to your bridge by visiting AO-GP.org. Get in session with remote auditing using the Theta Meter. Are you curious about where you stand? Head on over to AO-GP.org now and take our free personality test. Join the growing group of independent Scientologists today.
Hi, and welcome to another AOGP Outside of the Church podcast, brought to you by the Advanced Org of the Great Plains. I'm here with Arthur Moudakis and Scientologirl. This is season 9, episode 18, episode 109. And we're going to do a recap of last week's episode in episode 17, season 9, on the group processing. So I think I'll just start it off really simply, since neither of you done group processing before, and just whoever wants to start talking, start. What'd you think?
I thought it was pretty cool.
It was good.
Yeah. Like we discussed afterwards, there were moments of frustration. There were moments of awe. You know, it was sort of like very much a roller coaster of, I guess, thoughts and feelings with the whole thing.
Mm-hmm. How so?
Well, because like there were different stages, and it's sort of like that sometimes with auditing. Like sometimes I'll just be like, oh, can we just like, can I just get to the cognition, or can you just like move on from this? Like I'm over it. But then, you know, there's obviously also moments of like, wow, this stuff is fucking amazing, and I could do it all day. And, you know, so it was like that. It just sort of, you know, had its effects. But I will say that after we did it, I noticed for that day and basically the whole weekend, really, I feel like I had a lot more empathy. And I was a lot more present. Like I was just like here, you know? So man, that stuff was really, really good.
Mm-hmm. And you said something about exterior yesterday?
Yeah. You know, just being able to go exterior yesterday, the day we did it, was really cool because, I mean, I had experienced brief moments of it, but I felt like I hadn't experienced the whole thing, or I hadn't known what it was. And I had, you know, that realization, and then boom, it was just like pop out. And the realization, to be very brief, it was just simply that I had a choice in whether I wanted to be here or not. And I know that's kind of weird, but it felt a little prisony and other determined that I was here, but it was just so much better when I had the realization that I could choose to be here or not. And it wasn't like I don't have, you know, suicidal ideation or anything. That's not what I'm trying to say. It's more from a theta perspective than physical universe perspective.
Arthur?
Well, I'm curious, what was the objective of the session? Like what was it?
Well, that is strangely enough that you said that. What is the objective of the process? Is an objective process. Is you're dealing with the physical universe and getting the person as far as a group of persons in present time.
Wow. Huh.
Yeah. With a crunch.
That's kind of nail on the head for me.
With a crunch, for sure.
Yeah, because when we went into the group processing, I wasn't even sure what it was for.
Right. We were kind of blindsided.
We didn't talk about it. Yeah, we were. It was a surprise. We're doing this.
Yeah, this has to do with perception and your perception of the physical universe and the body and you as fate. And this again was from the lecture from 30 December 1954, one of the advanced clinical courses. So the lecture was called Group Processing. And there are a slew of group processes that one can do. and we had Jose Pina, sorry if I'm pronouncing your name wrong, mentioned on YouTube. He said, basically, can I do this every day?
Yeah.
And, it's not, to kind of address that to everybody, a process is a process. And when you do that process, you are getting the end result of that process. So it'd be sort of like doing a course or watching a movie. Once you've done it, you've done it. And so that particular part of the case is either keyed out or as is blown. In the case of what you mentioned after we I should have recorded, and we probably should do this from now on because there's so much good conversation that happens the minute we hit stop recording.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then just add it on as outtakes or whatever.
Yeah.
But you said also that you thought you went exterior as well.
Yeah, that's right.
Any thoughts on that as far as?
There was one point where I was completely unaware of the words and I just went somewhere else completely. And then something honed me back in. It was like a word triggered me or something. Or I found the whole process really, really interesting because at first, like I was actually really surprised at the amount of somatics that were occurring for me. Whether it was nauseousness, like a lot of nauseousness, like it was.
Yeah, in the beginning.
It was interesting at how. Yeah, and like through the whole process, and then probably about 3/4 of the way through, it all occurred to me what was happening, and then the nauseousness went away.
What was that?
It was literally being present in the body, not being outside of the body. And then once I was aware of it, and then once I was aware of it, like I was here, and the realization that there is a floor under me. Because at first I thought maybe it was like some kind of quantum thing, the floor is just my perception towards it. I found it really confusing. Yeah. And then when it kept going back to the floor, I couldn't argue with it anymore. It was like, yes, there's a floor under me. Yes, I'm sitting on a chair. And then at one point, like I became so distant to the floor and the chair that I'm like, oh, hang on, there's no floor there. There's no chair there. And like all these little aberrations, and it was just a really good example of the reactive mind. Yeah. It was an incredible example of the reactive mind. Just the way your mind goes. You ask the same question and then you get so many different answers until you're out of answers, and then it's just one answer. Yep, there's a floor. Yep, I've got a wall. Yep, there's a ceiling. Yep, there's a chair. Yeah, I've got a right hand and I have a left hand. But I think the profoundness of the reality of knowing you have a hand and that you're standing on the floor or sitting on a chair or being in this world as opposed to trying to escape this world somehow. I think that's what really hit me. Now, it's just here I am.
Right. Now, to Lisa's point, we were walking in somewhere when we were out yesterday.
Yeah, and we were going for breakfast.
Yeah, you were talking about exteriorization and how you being in one place as far as another. Now, exteriorization, to people that haven't heard this term before and are listening to the podcast, and I always forget to do this. Exteriorization is where you are a being and controlling a body. And when you do Scientology and Dianetics, independent Scientology and Dianetics auditing, you sometimes will go exterior. You will leave the body to a greater or lesser degree. This is what Arthur is talking about in Scientologirl. You were saying that you were torn between one quote unquote place and another. Can you tell me what you were saying about that yesterday? Yeah, you were like, well, I'm there, but I want to be here. I'm here, but I want to be that.
Yeah.
What were you saying?
Well, I was basically saying this is how the feeling of exteriorization kind of is. It's like you'll have some kind of realization or something, and then you'll pop out, but then you'll like panic and be like, no, I need to go back in there, So it's kind of like you want to, you pop out obviously because you don't want to be there. That's my take anyway. And then you don't want to be there either, so you got to pop back in, But
was it an issue of havingness for you, the havingness of the body, where you were like, okay,
absolutely, yeah, absolutely. There is a clingingness to.
I want to ask you that too, Arthur, by the way. So,
yep.
Yeah, for me, there is a clingingness to the physical reality, especially when it's kind of all you've known.
Yeah, I want my puppet back.
Yeah, like I think there's some people that would probably love the state and be like, yeah, this is so cool. But for me, it's like I'm just like, no, come back, body.
Arthur, what was your experience on that front?
Well, I think there is a place for exteriorization, but to be present, and this is just my own thoughts around it. But sometimes I think that, like Lisa said, you just want to escape sometimes. And I think the more connected I was getting with my body through the process, that's why the nauseousness was kicking in, I believe, because it was like, now I have to face what's really happening here and now, including my body. So there was an element of confront attached to it as well. Being okay with this vessel that's been assigned to me, or that I've chosen, or however we look at it. Yeah, it's pretty full on.
And it's interesting to me to also note how quickly, when we started the group processing, that it started to, as LRH's term, take effect or bite for both of you. You were laughing almost immediately, and Arthur was like, "Hold on, hold on."
Yeah.
Hold on. What's happening here?
Going on here?
This is really funny, because if you really think about it, both things that we were experiencing were kind of the same, even though they didn't have the apparency of being the same. Laughter is rejection.
That's right.
Well, your body, when you're nauseous, it's also trying to reject something.
Yeah.
So.
Yes, and that's you settled into it about, I don't know, 5-7 minutes in, and at the same time, in Arthur's end, he was feeling more and more nauseous there.
Yeah.
For a while, and
he just set me off though as well. Though, like I'm sorry, Arthur, but you're a hoot.
I'll be laughing at my pain.
Yeah, but knowing that it made you better in some ways. All that's
a great turnaround. I'll accept that.
Thank you.
And we had to abbreviate some of the reiterations of some of the processing questions for the sake of brevity.
Because we were bordering on 3 hours.
Yeah, it probably would have been closer to 4.
Yeah.
To do the whole thing, and that is a long process. But we still got the end result, which was case gain. The exteriorization was not what the purpose of the process is, but as I've told many a PC, that's not what we're going for. But sometimes it just happens, and you can imagine, when you look at this type of a process, that I was thinking about this when we first started the podcast just now, that you could say that the technology is alive and well. It's just a matter of somebody going out there and applying it to other people, and other people willing to apply it to themselves, and being there and communicating and everything. And you can imagine how, so word profound. Let me ask you this. Even though you guys have been doing stuff like Arthur's done life repair, you've done your grades, and all this stuff, would you say that this was a profound experience for you guys?
Absolutely.
Arthur?
Yeah, for me, I'm starting to see and it is profound. Like the simplicity of it just blows my mind, and the purposefulness of it as well. And then for me, like just over the last few months, like all these elements are really starting to take shape, and there's a reality around it that's really coming forth. And even just that little process there, it's a different version of something else that's to help you out. I don't know how to explain it. I know there's a reality that's really coming through quite strongly for me. And everything, all these processes are all so in unity with the same goal.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that's the best way I can put it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and there's just so many different ways. And it's like all these processes are catering for all kinds of personalities to reach the same place.
Mm-hmm.
You know, yeah, I don't know if that's an accurate thing to say, but that's how it feels.
For me, I mean, yeah, I totally and like get what you're saying as well. For me, I had sort of like the best of both worlds. Two things that I hadn't really, or I had experienced, but they were a lot more brief and a lot less certain. So like, it was obviously being completely present and here. And then it was also the opposite, which it was like pop out, not here, So that was really, really interesting for me. And I had not experienced that prior to this. I had experienced moments of it, but like I said, I didn't really quite, understand what was happening. And honestly, I always felt like the odd kid out because everybody else could exteriorize. And I'm like, what is this phenomenon? Like, when is it going to happen to me? I should be able to do it. Like I have cognitions and stuff like that, but yeah, I just didn't know what it was at the time. But this was like full on. This was like I had accepted that it was. It's hard to explain, but it's just I had accepted that it could happen to me. Therefore, I guess it did happen.
Dare I say, do both of you have a better, and I don't mean this in a condescending way at all.
Mm-hmm.
We're just discourse about what happened, if you will. Dare I say, did this give you a better understanding of the differentiation of the physical universe as opposed to the theta universe? Could I go that far?
For me, not.
I'd say yes.
Yeah. For me, it's hard to say. I'm gonna say that the experience of pulling away was just it was brief. So, it wasn't very clear. But I will say when I was in the present moment, there was something, it was definitely something else. It was something, it was physical, but it wasn't. It was just like I was here and able to perceive, and it was almost like a knowingness for a good like 20, 30 seconds, just complete knowingness, certainty. I don't, if you actually go back and re-listen, I think I was even talking differently. I feel like I spoke like a sage at that point in time or something. And then when I snapped out of it, I was like, oh, interesting.
Well, he mentions that in the ACOB, the composite being, as well. And it's unfortunate that he describes it this way, but long and short of it is when a person goes exterior, they're separating from their reactive mind, which is something you said earlier, Arthur. And you look at it and you go, okay, I am not part of this. So when you go exterior, LRH talks about in the composite being bulletin that this woman came in and she was clearly at that moment insane, and she and her husband were trying to get a resolution to what it was that she was dramatizing, and he was able to get her exterior with a process, and they were able to develop a plan so that she could be stably sane and outside of her reactive mind. But later on that came back in, and it was not something that could be stable at that point in time. So it's interesting that the phenomena that we're talking about in this particular process was present within, I don't know, what was it, half an hour for both of you guys, maybe? And I'm not trying to speak for you. I mean, was it longer than that? Was it at the end? Was it at the beginning that you went exterior on a group process where you were doing something with other people? It wasn't even just an auditor and you. How long do you think it was?
For me, it was like 3/4 of the way.
Okay. And Arthur?
Maybe halfway. Yeah, because I found some of it quite intense.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I'm going to say, yeah, possibly half to 3/4.
So it doesn't take much time for a person to experience, to have demonstrated to them that exteriorization is possible. And this goes along with, what happened to Scientology, the remote viewing series, where this is your...
Oops. Sorry.
Okay. 3, 2, 1. This is where people get the idea that what Hubbard says is the case. In other words, it is a fact that you are not a body. Mm-hmm. You are a static being, and that through simple auditing process. I mean, this wasn't. I mean, you could have been sitting, and LRH actually mentions this in the earlier bulletins about group processing, that you could be in a coffee shop and you could do this with somebody if you wanted to. Mm. So It's not hard to do, and it is real.
Yeah.
And that there is a lot more going on here with beings and their association with this universe, their body, and their association with who they are, that's easily presentable to anyone.
Yeah.
Which is incredible. And this was in 1954. He did this. Now we were talking about early on, Lisa and I, the matter of boredom, where LRH actually has a solution to boredom. If somebody gets bored in the middle of one of these processes, the way it was typically set up is that you'd have a room full of people and a person at a podium, and you'd have a couple other auditors that would be there, that would be assistant group auditors. So let's say somebody ran into something. One of the assistant group auditors would come out to the person that raised their hand, and they would take them in a room and handle whatever it was that manifested for that person. And it's important to note that there's actually a group auditor's code. Did you know this?
Mm-mm.
No.
I'm going to read it to you real quick. It says, 1, people don't ever come late to a group auditing session. 2, the group auditor does not audit with processes which establish long communication lags. The communication lag is you say something to somebody and they wait 30 seconds before they answer because they're busy processing it or they don't know what to think of it. 3, he audits primarily with techniques which will discover every person in the group alert at the end of an hour's processing. 4, the group auditor must be willing to grant beingness to the group. 5, he gives his commands in a clear, distinct voice. 6, if he notices that people at some part of the room or another look at him suddenly after he's given the command or look at him questioningly, he simply repeats the command for the whole group. 7, his mission is to get that command through and registered. 8, he recognizes and must recognize that people to whom he is talking in this group are not an audience. Parentheses, they are a number of people who are in a greater or lesser degree involved in recognizing, looking at, or resolving problems relating to their beingness, and as such, of course, they are slightly out of communication with them. And so he must recognize this, just as he has to in an individual auditing session. 9, he has to give his command clearly, distinctly, and get an answer. 10, he must take enormous precautions, actually very exaggerated precautions, and this is in italics, to make sure that every word he said is clearly registered to the most annotant person in the entire group. Person that is annotant would be sort of out of present time. 11, he must also be careful to give his commands in such a way as to not give a number of failures to one or more individuals in the group. And finally, number 12, if the group auditor is willing for the group to get well, so I just started to develop a Southern accent there, they'll get well. If he's interested in whether they get well, they will. If he's interested in having a group, he'll have one. Now, see if I can find this particular reference. There's a remedy for boil off. Remember, you guys were yawning a lot?
Yeah.
The remedy for boil off, the group auditor may encounter boil off in the group during processing. Use any of the one following 3 processes to handle this. One is an objective happiness process, A, which is touch that. So touch that chair, touch that desk, touch that lamp, that type of a thing. Then there's objective happiness, B, 1, touch your designated body part, 2, touch that indicated object, differentiating yourself from the body and the objects in the physical universe. And then having this process C, notice that, and then you point out an object, notice that light, notice that fan, so on and so forth. That's a way to get to handle the boil off.
Because you were doing a bit of that, weren't you? Notice the light.
Yeah. Then that's actually in the process. That wasn't something I added in. He actually built that into the process because he knew it was going to happen. Now, here's the remedy for boredom. I think this is fascinating. And I mentioned it to you yesterday on our day off. Remedy for boredom. If the group auditor notes many members of the group are becoming bored during a session, the following can be used. Run for a few minutes. It can effectively remedy any boredom being manifested by the group. So first, what you do is you get the wall on your left saying, I have arrived. Have it say those words to you. This is literally what he's saying to do. 2, have the wall on your right say, I have arrived. 3, have the floor saying to you, I have arrived. And then he says, run this command for any object in the room for floor, ceiling, and walls. Run them saying, I have arrived, 2 or 3 minutes worth. Then have them all say at once to the pre-clears, I have arrived, 2 or 3 times. Then have the walls and ceiling and objects say to the pre-clears very reassuringly, you have arrived, 2 or 3 times. Then, step 4, now have all the things in the environment saying to you very reassuringly, you have arrived. That's the remedy for boredom.
Very interesting.
Yeah. So you can do that if somebody gets bored. Mm-hmm. So these are things that can handle any situation that comes up in a group auditing session. So processes for the assistant group auditor. This is something you could do if somebody says, hey, I'm running into some trouble. 1, feel the floor beneath your feet. These should sound familiar to you. 2, find a spot on the wall. 3, go over to it and touch it. 4, find another spot on the wall. 5, go over and touch that. 6, find the floor beneath your feet. 7, find some spots on the wall. This process is continued running through each of the commands in sequence, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, etc., until the person is over his difficulty and he is then returned to the group. So you would take the person aside and then return them back to the process in the main room. So these are some of the things that they did at the time. And that's all there is to it.
That's really cool.
Yeah. So any other thoughts, feelings, or significances? It's going to be a pretty short podcast, but I wanted to just do a little wrap up on what we did last week because it was such a long thing.
Well, I think for me, I found it interesting that I had more empathy after doing it. Mm-hmm. So in my mind, I think I must have sort of, I don't know if it's just me or if this is how it is, but it's kind of like being present equals empathy. Mm-hmm. And I guess
ARC.
this is why, yeah, yeah. You know, a lot of these what do you call them? These gurus and monks, they have a lot of empathy.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Arthur, did you experience that same
for me,
phenomenon?
in a way, but not so much in an empathy sense. For me, it was like just wanting to experience my body. I really wanted to go for a motorbike ride afterwards because, when you're riding your motorbike, all your senses are on. You've got the wind, you've got the smell of the air, and, you've got to have an awareness and that kind of thing. And I was just really keen to ride my motorbike just to be so present and just soak everything up. So I suppose in some ways there's an element of empathy there, but in a way of just being totally present as well.
More so than riding a
and I felt quite
motorbike, you think?
settled.
Yeah.
I think riding the motorbike would have just enhanced that, because riding the motorbike really gets your senses going. And I was just like, wow,
Yeah.
I'm back in my body, so to speak.
80,
I just want to look at the stars and ride my motorbike. Yeah.
80 kilometers an hour will do that to a person. You have to pay attention. But I guess
it's hard to stick to 80 kilometers when you've got a motorbike.
Yeah, you want to go a lot faster. It's tough.
Oh,
yeah. 70 miles an hour in the US on a motorcycle is, but let's see what 100 will do,
Yes. Yes.
But do you find that you guys feel forced, or do you just feel, yeah, here I am?
Oh, it was a completely natural thing. It wasn't a forced thing at all. And that's something, for example, with meditation, it can feel pretty forced. Like you're trying to not try, but you inevitably try, to keep pulling your focus back, all of that. And in this, this is in a way sort of similar. You are putting your focus back, but it's just more like physical university. I don't know how to explain it.
Mm-hmm. Does it make you feel more expanded as a being? You too, Arthur. Feel free to jump in.
I wouldn't say for me it was really a size thing. I mean, during the process, there were moments where I felt really big, and then there were moments where I felt kind of small. Like there was one point that was quite weird. It was like I felt like my body was this huge vessel, and I'm just like this tiny thing. But even though I was tiny, I was fucking dynamite, like it was like I knew that I had so much power. I mean, so much power. I could power this giant vessel that I was, kind of a thing. Yeah. So in that way, I think that there was a size thing, but I don't think it's what you really meant.
Well, it's funny. Arthur, you go ahead and anything you want to say there before I go on to the next time. I'm thinking faster than I can talk.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, I felt elements of things I'd notice is like my hands. And it's hard to explain because noticing what you've already got as if you've just seen it, in a sense, for the first time. And it's easy to sort of like, you see your hands every day, you use them so often for so many things, but you don't sort of recognize them or appreciate them in such a way. And then, there were moments where I just look at my hands and I'm like, man, that's my hands. Like these hands have done so much for me.
Yeah.
All my life, just that, I don't know, self-appreciation and for my body, because sometimes life gets really, really funny and you just want out. You don't want to feel all the emotion that the body can bring as well. But then, it was almost like a locational assist for my body. That's what it felt like in the end. And it was almost like adding mass to the concept of my body. I found elements of like the study tech and some of the assists, like as part of this program, this process, and it was like literally just putting me back where I belong. It was almost like a locational, And the word that got me was when you got to the point of, I can't remember if it was who is the subject or what is the subject.
Yeah.
The moment that
was, I
subject
noticed
word
that
came
both of you guys really shifted there. I mean, it was palpable in the Theta universe with
and
you
as
guys.
soon as that,
it was just, there was just this
both
big,
of us were flying, and then it was just
right. There's this big change in viewpoint, of dimension.
I think the question was, whose subject is it?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
that's right. That's right. Yeah.
And the funny thing is, I think we both took on different definitions of that. Like, I correct me if I'm wrong, Arthur, but I think you interpreted subject as like the person is a subject to you kind of a thing, and I took it on in a more like what is the subject matter? Yeah.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, because my mind first went there, and I'm like, the subject, and then it clicked. I'm like, oh my God, I am the subject. I'm creating the subject.
Yeah. It
was just like bloody hell without,
And that was what?
Too much colorful language.
3 or 4 words.
Yeah.
Oh, even just the power of the words. Simple language, but just the profoundness of that simple language.
That's why they call it spelling. I feel like there's a reason 100%. Why they say, and I mean, words are so powerful.
When you say to somebody, do you know how to spell? How do you mean that?
Yeah.
I mean, you look up the definition.
Me write you a contract.
Yeah. And you look up the definition of spell, and you look at Old English, and you go, wait a minute. This is what they're talking about. They knew more. They knew something that we've lost in that definition. But that's the interesting thing, and why it is so important to understand the words that you're reading or you're listening to in order to apply what is being requested or asked of you, or you're putting out there in the universe for yourself. And just these words in a certain order cause these effects. It's as simple as that. And it's hard to get that across to somebody that's new to the subject of independent Scientology and Dianetics.
So apparently late 16th century, it went to spell from S-P-E-L-E, variant of dialect spell, take the place of unknown origin. That's interesting.
Yeah, I've got a definition here: an ability to control or influence people as though one had magical power over them.
Yeah.
And you could say something as simple as a speed limit sign. It's an overwhelming, of course, it has consequences attached to it.
As a declaration.
Or, a state of enchantment caused by a magic spell.
Instead of 80 kilometers an hour, it could be you are a large and capable being.
Yeah.
Where you are very small, and so auditing has a tremendous effect, especially if you're set up for it, because that was 3/4 of the way through the process that we came up with that particular line as far as the subject. Mm-hmm. Was it the subject?
Whose subject is this?
Whose subject is, and that was where things really kicked into high gear.
Yeah. And I felt gaslit for a bit as well.
Did you?
Yeah.
How so?
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah. So like just that constant, you sure? Is the floor there?
Mm-hmm.
Are you sure?
Mm-hmm.
That kind of thing.
It's the reaffirming of it,
And then it's like questioning the reality, and then what is? Yeah.
But how many answers go through your mind just to answer a simple question like that?
Right.
Are you sure the floor is there?
What is the right answer?
I think it is. Maybe it's not. Like all the justifications and all the different ideas, and because even like there were elements of me like, is this a quantum question?
Yeah.
Is it particles? Is it a mist? Is it my perception? Is it really
Ethereal.
there? Is it this? Is it that?
Yeah.
Yeah, all those kinds of things. And isn't it interesting though, through that process though, like how many different considerations we have for the one thing?
Yeah.
Like a floor.
And it's probably
are
reactive.
my feet actually on the floor?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think so. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, so it gives you, and that's what an auditing process does, is it gives you the opportunity to look at all of the various angles of something that you may not have taken a look at before, and you just grabbed an answer, now I'm supposed to, and went with it and never really looked at all of the other ways. And that's why there are so many iterations of the same question. Or as a command, there are both questions and commands in auditing. Look at that wall, or can you see that wall?
Now, would you say this is kind of a testament to our whole conversation about, in previous podcasts about Matterhorns, where they're difficult to train? Because if their certainty was that high, right, and somebody who, is a Matterhorn and they come on the podcast, or they do this group processing and they don't see like what the things that we experience, because obviously if they already have this, like, I know all there is, right, having their reality questioned, they're going to be like, no, the reality is there's a flaw, there's a flaw, there's a flaw, there's a flaw. Never introspecting and really questioning if there is, in fact, a flaw. Therefore never getting any gains, because you're only looking at one reality. Well,
then that brings us to answer that question. I think it would be best to put it at where is a Matterhorn on reality on the CDEI scale? Are they at enforced, inhibited, no, or refused?
Probably refused.
You could say that they're at refused.
Maybe no at the bottom.
Right. No, it's a wall. Right. Because they're not will. I mean, and conversationally, it seems to me that they would be saying, well, no, it is this way, because as an assertion, they're asserting that, well, of course it's a wall.
Yeah.
Dummy. I know that. Everybody knows that. Whereas if you're at curious or desired, or you're interested in that there might be other perspectives.
Yeah.
I mean, that's it kind of seems like, well, now I'm supposed to say this because I don't want to be questioned, and I'm not going to question because you don't want to confront.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much all it is. And these processes get people, they shake them up to, well, wait, there might be something there. And then you say, are you sure? Are you sure you're sure? You sure? And that's what gets, because you're shaking their stable datum on purpose to get them to look at it in a way that they haven't looked at it before. Whereas if it was in a regular auditing process, you would almost never see that sort of a thing. But you have more latitude in a group process as opposed to a one-on-one auditing session. And we have not even come close to scratching the surface to some of the group processes. So that's what we have to look forward to. I'd like to do at least one of these a week and get it across to people. This is, I mean, they're literally seeing what this stuff can do in group processes. Can you imagine a room full of 30 or 100 people doing this all at the same time?
Yeah, that would be interesting.
Wouldn't that be something?
I wonder if you'd have to have buckets next to us.
It would be the first time.
Possibly, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, possibly. Because like even all that energy and all that stuff, all that, etheric mass or emotional mass, it's got to come out somehow, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's got to come out somewhere. And it wouldn't be the first time that I've seen, I've seen people throw up on just doing TRs and confronting day after day after day after day, multiple times a day, because something turned on. So, anything can turn on in these group auditing processes, just like a regular auditing process. And it's going to be, especially these objective processes, can really kick in some things that you wouldn't normally see in a subjective process per se. Because some people don't know that they're either in an obsessive present time or they're completely out of present time.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this. Did you feel like you were in present time after, or well, what happened for you?
Well, even after, I was very much in present time. Like I felt like I was more in control, in a sense, where I was just more aware of my surroundings, where I was, what I was actually doing, and that kind of thing. But I just want to say as well, like I found it interesting how difficult it was to answer a simple question. You know, is there a flaw there? Like, and I was amazed at how difficult it was to answer something so bloody simple. Like it blew my mind afterwards. And I think just the way the process went, I don't know, in the spiritual world, would that be grounding? Like, Lise, did you and I end up being completely grounded after this process?
She went to the bathroom. She'll be right back.
Oh, did she? Okay. And so, yeah, it was, but yeah, as far as presence went, yeah, I was very present in the here and the now.
Afterwards.
Yep. Afterwards, yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Yep.
Here's a good question. Did you have any conversations with anybody over the weekend regarding this?
Yeah. No, I haven't spoken to anybody about it. Other than you guys, this is the first time I've spoken about it since.
Yeah. So what happened over the weekend? Did you have any realizations regarding it that, you know, that were latent? Because sometimes that happens with people.
Sure. Actually, now that you asked me that, one thing I did notice was, so during the Purif, I really fell behind with a lot of my work. Mm-hmm. And since the Purif, I've really struggled catching up on it. Whereas after Friday, I'm like, okay, this is what I have to do. And I went and did it without any real issue.
Mm-hmm. Just knocked it out.
Like there was, yeah. Whereas the previous weekends, something would come up, or I was just too lazy or too tired or whatever my justification was, and I just wouldn't get it done. Mm-hmm. Whereas this weekend, there was a lot less of that. And I'm a little tired from it because, you know, I spent many hours, but at the same time, now I'm in a position where I don't have to think about that. Mm-hmm. Done.
What's your viewpoint on time after doing this?
There's not enough of it.
Is it scarce in a good way? Or do you make your own time? Or
I don't know if that's been a factor. Maybe it has, but not in a conscious way.
Mm-hmm. You know, and Arthur was saying,
like even today, I've achieved way more than I normally would in my everyday without any issue.
Right.
There's been yeah.
That's very interesting. You have more time, but you don't. You need more of it because there's so many other things you want to do. Basically.
Oh, pretty much. Yeah, pretty much.
Did you see that we were talking about that he felt more grounded and that he was. I'm going to take some liberty here where he was a lot more the master of all he surveyed. Did you experience that?
Yeah, no, for sure. For me, I think if you had to ask me the question about time, I would say that it is very interesting that when you are fully present, you're not as weighed down. And I think it's because when you're looking at the future and you're looking at the past, right, you're essentially just keep you're putting things there all the time. And let's say you have a bag. Basically, you can make this into an analogy, metaphor, whatever. And you're taking things from the future and the past, and you're just putting it in that bag, and that stuff you're carrying with you throughout your day, and you keep getting distracted by all those things. You know, you only have so many attention units, and when you're using them up, you're using them up. So it can seem like you have so much more to do and so little time. But when you're fully present, you're not focusing on the future or the past. So therefore, you're focusing on the present moment. And you'll be surprised. Like, I was so surprised that I was able to get the stuff done that I wanted to this weekend, more than what I would usually do.
Yeah.
And
that's what I was just saying to John as well.
Yeah, he was.
Thing. Nothing got in the way of it. There was no justifiers. There was no extra influences preventing me or whatever. Yeah.
There wasn't it's the weekend justifier.
Yeah, right. Yeah, because I think, you know, like when you are going and putting yourself in the future or the past, you can be tempted to make excuses or whatever. And those are all sort of reactive mind stuff because, well, there's things you don't want to confront.
Mm-hmm. So
it's easiest TLDR version is it's easier to confront the present moment if you just allow yourself to.
So it made you mindful and demure.
Yeah.
It's a TikTok reference for this. If you know, you know.
Very mindful, very demure. You see this podcast? We're very mindful. Very cutesy. Sorry, I'll stop.
So interesting how one process about perception can cause all of these interesting phenomena and results. Mm-hmm. I don't want to use the word effects. I think it would be better to say that it was an emanation point for, dare I say, causality.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
More than anything, one group process.
Yeah. It.
I do have a question.
Mm-hmm.
Just real quick, I just want to say that I think that, you know, for everybody listening, I mean, yes, my realization that I had and my ability to be completely present, those experiences are going to last forever for me. However, you have to maintain this in order to maintain the state, and that's where auditing comes from.
Mm-hmm.
So, and why it's necessary. So, yeah, if you had fun with this, I would definitely recommend you get more of this fun stuff with us.
Yeah, and I posted, and I think you may have seen this, Arthur. I posted on Jose's comments on YouTube the volume 1 of the group auditing handbook, and I OCR'd it, and that way it's searchable and everything now as a PDF, but it's on there to download for people so they can take this out and they can do this with friends and family and stuff. And you will be amazed at the difference it will make in the universe surrounding you. If you had just your 5 closest friends and you sat down and said, come over tonight, we're not drinking, we're not, we're just going to be beings in a room, and I want to do something with you, and I want to get your take on it. How big of a change this can make, these ripples go out into the physical and the theta universe and everything. What was your question on it?
It's a good idea. It was more around exteriorization. So it's one thing to accidentally go exterior during a process like this, but then what about intentional exteriorization? Does that have a place somewhere?
Absolutely. I mean, it is an ability gained to just back out of the body at will. And, I mean, the term exteriorization is also outside of the the subject of Dianetics and Scientology, remote viewing with or without full perception. In the beginning, it might not be much other than like what you were saying yesterday was, how did you describe it when you started to go exterior?
That whole pulling back, going back in type of feeling? Or?
Well, what was your experience on that? You said it wasn't this, but it was that.
So it wasn't full on like they say, like where you can, see yourself from that, like you can see your body and then there's you that you can't see. It's more just, it's not a visual perception, it's a feeling. So it makes you feel sort of not really there. Like the reality is kind of numb and ethereal.
Mm-hmm.
Versus when you're in the body and you're fully immersed and present,
mm-hmm.
you are, like everything is bright, everything is full color,
right,
that kind of thing.
And that would be characterized, and there isn't a better or a worse, but that would be characterized as exteriorization without full perception, but it is still exteriorization.
Yep.
You get to a point to where you have that and you can do it, okay, bink, okay, I'm here, or bink, I'm there, type of a thing. There isn't any weight for it. You don't have to, it isn't like changing scenes in a video game or something, loading.
So I guess what Arthur's getting at, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, is what is the benefits of being able to do it at will? Like, why would you want to?
Well, your day is a lot better. A lot of the time when you're exterior to the body as an OT, you find that you're not the adverse effect of things. You don't find yourself thinking about things. You just find yourself perceiving.
So
things.
Basically, you would probably,
like a third person.
Yeah. And you'd kind of, I guess, take on the viewpoint of, okay, this game has become very real to me, versus, when we're fully immersed in the body and problems and all of that stuff, it's more like you don't see it as a game. You see it as a fuck, my life is ending kind of a thing.
Yeah. You're not, I mean, you're quite literally, you're exterior to it, in parentheses or quotes, you're exterior to it. And so you're perceiving it as opposed to living it. And so you just go, okay, yeah, this is going on. All right. And then you make a decision, a postulate, okay, about this. And when one is exterior, the body is an impediment. It is, LRH says that it's more that the body is a sliver in the thetan and the thetan is a sliver in the body. And so it's like a thorn. And when you're exterior, you don't have that you don't have that resistance. And so when you postulate and you're exterior, postulates are more, well, I'm understating it, but postulates occur darn right immediately, as opposed to getting all of this resistance feedback counter postulate type of a thing. So what you're trying to do is get the being to it's sort of be like you're checking in on the website. What's the temperature outside today? What's the winds? What's the barometer? What's the humidity? And you just check the website. You don't have to be on the website. And then you go about your day.
So it's like, let's say you have a chemical emotional reaction occurring in the body of some kind of overwhelm instead of
adrenaline.
Instead of that, instead of that chemical reaction consuming you and preventing you from healthier decisions, then you're on the outside and you're like, oh, the body's just reacted this way. Why has it reacted that way? Okay, it's because of that situation. Oh, well, that's easily handled. We can... you're almost like observing an animal in a sense. You've got your dog, walking your dog, and then all of a sudden your dog sees a threat, and then you see the threat and you prevent the threat, then the dog calms down.
That's right. Because, I mean, let's face it, The body is a carbon oxygen engine that is producing one chemical or another to keep the show on the road for the 54 perceptions that it has. It's a sensor array into the physical universe, and you're putting your hand into the plastic bubble of the physical universe. You can pull your hand out. You can put your hand in. You don't have to be
VR.
Yeah, it literally is where you see these new agers saying, we're living in a hologram. Yeah, but your perception of it and being exterior to it is the way to be. And so, go ahead.
I just wanted to ask real quick. Now, obviously, we're saying that, I always took those two as two different things, like exteriorization and being exterior as two different things. So exteriorization would be that phenomenon that we pop out, right?
Yep.
And then being exterior to something would be to take an objective viewpoint and be like, okay, things are bad, but we can still figure it out.
Yeah. Well, when a person gets emotional, what's happening with the body? Heart rate goes up, pulse goes up. Testosterone, estrogen, these are all chemicals. Mm-hmm. These chemicals in the body. And this is where, to your point that we talk about, this is where, to your point, that the brain is influenced by the chemicals that are being produced in the perception with the thetan in the body. And then guess what? Hilarity ensues. You've got restimulation and all of this. And okay, into the physical universe I go. And the body does that to you. But when you're exterior to it, you're not the adverse effect of these situations.
But are they two different things?
They're two different.
Exteriorization and exterior.
You're exteriorizing. Okay, the point of exteriorization is you're exiting the body to a greater or lesser degree.
Yeah.
Okay, but once you have gotten exterior to the body and it is not influencing you, now you have an exterior viewpoint.
But can you have an exterior viewpoint while still being in the body?
Absolutely. And that is the tightrope walk that one faces, and that auditing gets you much more familiarized with, to the point to where you can do this all the time and on a permanent basis, to where the body is basically, if you're getting on the computer to do something, you're interiorizing yourself into the computer. If you're getting into the car to drive to the store, you're interiorizing yourself into the body of the car to go to the store. So you're interiorizing into the body to interiorize into the car to interiorize to go into the store. You follow?
That's interesting.
Yeah. I mean, this is quite literally what we do every day. It's no wonder people get upset, because they aren't a body, they aren't a car, they aren't a store.
And I tell you, I think I've mentioned this in a previous podcast, but when I've been able to discern, when I've been able to go away from the situation and view it as a game, like I gamify it, I've become so much easier.
Yeah.
Like just immediately,
Yes.
all that stress is just gone. And it's just like, okay, these are my freedoms. These are my barriers. This is my purpose.
Yeah.
And you just work on it like that.
That is being exterior to it, because to the degree that you interiorize into something or some things in the physical universe is to the degree that, wait for it, things get solid. Is it any wonder that they get solid? Because serious solid is not what you want.
Yeah.
Serious game is what you want.
Yeah.
And this is what Hubbard says, is it's not serious solid. It is a serious game, but it's not a solid serious thing.
Yeah.
It is a game, and you need to keep it in that proper perspective. And that's why people get so frustrated that they have to interiorize into 8, 16, 20 different things to get something done in the physical universe. And you have to pull them out with rudiments and auditing and go, okay, so what do you have an ARC break? What do you have a present time problem with this one? Go ahead.
Sorry. And I was just thinking about that, imagine how much energy we are spending, I know this is going like somewhere else, but how much we are expending every single day focusing on these things. And it's not just the problems. We're putting on different valences. We're coming up with justifiers. We're having service facsimiles. All of those things take energy and mass, and they're weighing us down. And I think that is why Scientology is so fucking amazing. When you do auditing, it removes all of those things. So then you just kind of do. You just do what you need to do. There's not so much energy expenditure.
Right.
You know what? Like there are some people that will do something wrong. I think, we were watching, there's this new show we're watching, Selling Sunset. Well, it's actually not new, but we started now. It's new for us.
Yeah.
And this one girl,
the treatise of how the reactive mind works in groups is what it should be called.
Yeah. So there's this one girl who, she made a mistake. Look, we've all been there. We've all made mistakes. But she held on so tightly that, at first she was like, she lied about the situation. Then when confronted about the lie, she then made justifiers. Then she went totally into grief, all that expenditure. And you know what? If it was me, I would just be like, look, I fucked up. I'm sorry. Done. Over and done with. Mm-hmm. Over and done with.
Right. It's this now I'm supposed to that Hubbard talks about. Now I'm supposed to do this. Yeah. You cover it up with a rug, and then you put cement over the top of it, and then you put another building on top of it. And then, and now you've got mass, solidity, which is the opposite of getting exterior, because when you get exterior to things, you now can view them as they really are, taking the alter isness off. So you go from not is, alter is, to as isness, and the isness changes in there. And that's the whole idea, to being exterior through getting auditing to a point to where you can control it yourself. And I'm not saying the goal of Scientology auditing is to be an exterior being. It happens. That is not the goal.
I think it is, though.
Yeah, it is, but it isn't.
When you're looking at OT phenomena, you're an operating theta.
You're an operating theta, and you just find yourself after new OT7 and or Excalibur, you find yourself being outside of the body more often than you're not. And
I think if we're talking exterior in that way, then it's not the goal.
Yeah, it just it just happens. That's the idea from it. But it's whenever you get exterior to a problem, and a problem is a postulate, counterpostulate, force, counterforce. When you get exterior to it and you go, wow, that is really wacky that I'm making this person wrong for making a mistake. At that very moment, it ceases to be, because you're exterior to it. That's the whole idea, is because everything that we run into that it is an issue, it is only an issue because we deem it an issue. Right. It is a problem because we have made a problem. Therefore, he says, are you theta the solver? Are you theta the problem? And that's what exterior is about. The problem is being a thetan in a meat body. I was watching a video last night on YouTube with Elon Musk, and how he was talking about, that we're all robots. I thought it was very interesting that he mentioned this. It was a bit of a round table, and he was saying, we're in meat robots. And I thought, he gets it. And they were talking about robots that Tesla is making and everything, and how they make hands for these robots, and that they had to reinvent and redesign the Tesla robots, because most of the muscles that control your fingers, or almost all of the muscles, are in your forearm. And all you have is lines of control to the fingers, tendons. And they've figured out, well, the body is a great example of how to do something in the physical universe. And so there's 25 degrees of motion. So, and when you buy into that and you go, okay, well, this is the only way to do this. Now you've agreed, I am a body. That's where the problem begins. Problem of the physical universe. But once you're outside of that, these are the tools. The body is one. Postulation is the best. And the best way to postulate is without the body and being exterior, because you don't have all that pushback from the body and the composite case. So that's the goal, is to get back to your good old native self in the end, ultimately.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, we really are robots, if you really think about it, because we are completely programmable. It takes 3 weeks to develop a habit, and then we're technically programmed. We've programmed ourselves.
Yeah.
Hypnotism, easy way to, you know,
not a good way, but it's
an easy way.
Yeah.
Like the whole implant thing, you know, earworms that get stuck in our head. Yeah. Like it's all sort of similar in that, you know, we are creatures of habit, basically, and number of times over equals certainty.
Yeah. I wanted to do this particular activity of a group processing for people to see how quickly and in all of the things that occurred, there were all kinds of phenomena that were experienced just in a few pages of words in a PDF document, and doing it the way that it's supposed to be done, and the changes that were made. And if you continue on that line, it expands and expands and expands, not in a solid physical universe way, but in a degree of ARC and KRC for you guys. And anybody else that wants to do it. It's just a matter of becoming familiar with the material and then having the confront to sit down and do it with your friends, family, neighbors, whatever. It's all there. This stuff is, believe it or not, 1954. How many years ago was that? Do the math.
70 years.
70 years ago. Isn't that something?
Yeah, well, beings don't
I have
change.
to admit, there was one aspect of it that was a bit CIA-ish.
Yeah.
Yeah. It just felt like that. Like, it just felt like a mind program hack of some kind, but it was like very command based as opposed to, find yourself based. It was very direct. It was very precise. It was very calculated.
Right. Well, you could see when he talked about Black Dianetics 2 years earlier in 1952, you could see that if put in the wrong hands.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the thing.
If we could do this, what else can we do?
That's right.
What other words can we use?
That's right. And
what are the commands?
Yeah. There are many authors out there who are afraid to publish their ideas and are responsible enough not to because of what people might do with them.
Yeah.
And I have mixed feelings about that, but Hubbard was not one of those people, for better or for worse. And he talks about that in several lectures, is we have a choice here. And there's a what's the word? A conservatorship that we as AOGP are trying to do to see that it does go in the right direction and not in a wrong direction, and point out that it can and has gone in the wrong direction. And if we're not careful, it could happen again. So, I think all in all, it was a really cool process, and I look forward to doing some more with you guys.
I do understand what Arthur was saying, though, about the whole CIA element, but it begs the question then, like, well, I guess this is going into, the OT3 and, the upper level stuff where it's like, why is it that we can be programmed? Like why is it that we all kind of follow the same rules? I mean, just looking at it's amazing to me with the overt motivator sequence. If there was ever anything that could demonstrate how we are all so freaking similar, it would similarly programmed, it would be that. Because immediately after an overt, You know, it's not like some people, they immediately apologize and mean it. And some, like almost one for one, there's always a justifier there. And then later on, maybe some of us will have a realization, you know what, I could have been better or something like that.
Automaticity.
Yeah. It's pretty crazy. But I guess my point really is that it's just weird knowing that we're all the same in this way. Like it can't be coincidence. Like I can understand, you know, our physical attributes, you know, 2 hands, 2 feet, all of that stuff. But even our behavior is the same.
Well, like he says, a thetan has to agree to become aberrated.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What did you say, Arthur?
I don't know if you guys know much about the history here of Australia with the Aborigines and then how all that happened. But
not really.
I think it was 1975 or 1978. They stopped, so that we have here what they call the stolen generation. So a lot of these, and it wasn't just Aboriginal kids, it was white kids as well, because there was a lot of convicts that were brought over to develop Australia. And they actually stopped stealing kids in, I think it was 1978. So it wasn't that long ago that this kind of stopped. And I was watching a documentary about what they call the stolen generation. So that was like children stolen from their tribes, stolen from their families, had no idea of their heritage or anything. And these are full-coloured young kids, right? And so they were brought up in a Christian way, and they were taught to be white-skinned Christians, right? But their skin was black, like black-skinned Aborigines. And what I found interesting was that when, in the late 70s, when all of this stopped, you know, these people that were brought up as white-skinned Christians didn't even realize that they were black Aborigines. They had no idea. And it was the compelling nature of whatever technology they were using to do this to people with. It kind of blew my mind a bit, because it made me think, all right, you know, somebody with obviously dark skin believed they were white, you know, until they were in their 60s when they realized, hang on, I'm not a white man, I'm a black man, or a white woman or a black woman. And it got me thinking, if they had the technology to do that back then, what technology have they done to us now? You know, this is way before the internet. This is way before the technology we have available to us. It was kind of a scary thought, because they were schooled, no different to the way we were schooled. All these processes we've been through, exactly the same as these stolen Aborigines.
Well, and to
exactly the same.
Yeah, to that point, one of the things that you have to realize, and why aberration is so prevalent, is that you can get a thetan to agree or become anything.
If you can get him to question his reality, especially repeatedly, yeah.
Right. You can tell them you are a paper bag that can contain other thetans, and they cannot escape. And that is your job. This sort of thing, I know, is far out and fantastical as it is, and it's probably so out reality for people. It is the case, and it is one of the most aberrative things where a thetan agrees that they are, and you see this in India with castes. It's a prime example that they are taught, just like you were talking about with the stolen generation, that they are a certain caste caliber of people, and they cannot rise above that their entire lives. And you need to know your place. Well, that's because it's intrinsic in a thetan that they can be a palm tree, they can be a plant, they can be a dog, they can be an unconquerable being of great force, or they can be a pebble of grain sand on a beach, or nothing at all. And the reason for that is that the only thing that's causing them to do that is themselves. That's why auditing works.
Yeah.
It's just as simplistic as that. You know, what is it you're being? And that comes down to subject, and what we were doing in this process the other day is we did touch on that, because you asked me before. You said, what was it you said? Am I gonna be OT? Or what was it you said?
That's right. Yeah.
And my reply to you was, well, for a little bit you will be, because it'll key back in, because you can't help it. You're in the physical universe, and at some point it keys in, but to the degree that you get more auditing, the more stably you're outside of that. So there's really a lot of things that it uncovers for the person doing it. And, in this podcast, we're presenting it to people that it's a very, very intriguing subject.
Yeah, it is.
I'm thinking of a question, but it's one of those that you don't really know how to fully word it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we've had lots of discussions about being OT. This is going off on a tangent a little bit, but is being OT a maintenance thing, or you OT and then boom, you're OT? That's it. And I think the same can be said for clears. Like, if you're clear, you stay, or
well. From my own experience and Hubbard's own experience, and when he was operating as an OT in the 60s, and he went to Rhodesia and he got his ass handed to him. And you've run into this yourself in Rhodesia and everything like that.
Being South African.
Well, no, I mean, that you may have been around in that area where he was at that time and everything like that. And it got quite dangerous for him. And he came back and he realized that OTs can only survive with other OTs. And that is because, well, you have to have a theta. I'm just going to use this term. It's not his term, but you're going to have a theta bubble. You have to have 7 or 8 OTs. He says the best number is 7 or 8. And it's funny because we have a 7-division organizing board as well. But you have to have an organized effort in order to create that theta bubble in the physical universe, so to speak.
Okay.
So it is something that, even though if you work in numbers, you have to, it is always a work in progress. And there is always more auditing one can do. And when one is involved in the physical universe, entropy is going to try and pull you back into the physical universe. It's like being a doctor or a chiropractor. They continue to do continuing education. So do I. And I have fallen prey to the physical universe, and I would love to be in a group of OTs all the time, because things are drastically different. And the way that it makes you feel, not physically, but feel as a being, is tremendous.
The freedom and liberty, basically.
Yeah, and there is no effort, and the type of games that you can take on and the things you can pull off in the physical universe because of being in the theta universe are just tantamount to almost indescribable.
Yeah. I will say, I've said it before, but I will say that there have been times where I was like, everything's just fucked. Like we're fucked. Everything's like nothing's going to work out right. And you're like, no, well, it'll be fine. And I'm like, how can you be so calm about this? We need to be freaking out so we can think of solutions. And you're just like, no, it'll work out. And every single time it does. Every single time.
It's that, like I mentioned in that podcast the other day, Qui-Gon Jinn says to Obi-Wan Kenobi, a solution will present itself, Padawan.
Yeah.
And I used to be the same way. I used to be the same way. The sky is falling, the sky is falling, the sky is falling. And at some point it changed. And it's not just because, I've been around and I'm older and all this stuff. It's just the viewpoint is it'll work out. But see, that's a postulate.
I have a complaint about your postulates.
What's that?
Can you please unmark whatever game you're playing that you have to have this high randomity, and then pose you get solutions for that. Like can you just make everything okay like all the time, so that I don't have to deal with the anxiety?
Well, I don't know if I'm on the right track, but I have to say, after doing the Purif, there's an as-isness that does occur with things that were always there in front of you.
Yeah.
And the thing I struggle the most with is, okay, now that I could see it for what it is, what do I do with that? And I think that's where,
Good question.
having a group of people around you to help you through those things, because it's one thing to be able to observe these things, but then what do you do with them?
Yeah.
Mm.
And I think that's where the trap is. Because you get to a
little
point,
bit.
Yeah. And then something new occurs, and then it's just like, it pulls you back, and you're like, how do I do this? Question mark. And then it's that question mark that keeps you stuck, because the moment you resolve that question mark, then it's easy. And it's like, oh, all I have to do is this. But while you're in limbo trying to work it out, that's when the overwhelm kicks in. That's where your anxieties come up, and your justifications, your pros and cons, and head noise. And, oh, my God.
Even me as a clear, I have moments like that. And for a while I beat myself up, because I was like, I shouldn't have a reactive mind anymore. But, only on, is it OT7 or something? You reach a stage where it says freedom from overwhelm. You no longer get overwhelmed.
That's OT3.
OT3. Yeah. Okay. So, obviously then clears also get overwhelmed.
Yeah. So, and it is interesting. Right. It's interesting to point out that he talks about it, that, even as a clear, you can still mock up a bank.
Right.
And that is a big no-no to do that. And because you have the capability, it's sort of like, well, I can paint beautiful pictures of sunsets and oceans and trees and all this stuff, or I can paint pictures of really dark things. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
And you are the painter. What are you going to paint?
Yeah.
And you catch yourself and you're like, what did I just start painting? Oh my God, it's a picture of a cemetery. I've got to put some more gesso over this and clean it off, make it a white canvas. Now I'm going to paint, and then you go from there. But that's the thing. You make your own reality by what you mock up, and you have that ability when you're clear. But like he says in CS Series 73, you are at risk, and you need to go from clear to OT3 as quickly as possible, because Pandora's box is now open for business.
Sure.
And that open for business is the composite case. And it is not.
Thematic's turning on.
It is not a pretty one at all. And you don't realize that you're being pushed in directions that are not your quote unquote directions. So and that's why when you get to OT3 on the grade chart, it's at source on the awareness scale, because now you can spot the source of these things. Where is it coming from? Is it my case? Is it something else's case? That's the value of that is priceless.
Right.
But you've got to be able to spot it.
Yeah, because I mean, like with me as a clear, there are times it's like having the rule book, but for example, like if I'm having a bad day or something, I'll be like, okay, I'm creating this situation, so you have that rule book, but it's not always 100% effective. Like sometimes, like with smaller games, it's okay having that viewpoint that I mentioned earlier on. But then when things are really bad, like we're talking like one day away from rent, or a family member is sick, or something like that, and you have that, you can tell yourself, okay, I realize this is a game that I'm playing, However, all those emotions and stuff are still there, and you're still not able to fully just, I guess, deal with it, confront it, be present.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because you're presenting yourself with situations that are situations because you deem them to be situations.
Yeah.
That's all there is to it. It's a problem. Fate of the problem, fate of the solver. Is it a problem? Yeah, it's a problem because I consider it to be a problem.
Right.
I don't consider it to be a problem, which is what you see, what you were saying, you see happen to me. Okay, yeah, it's a problem, but this is a game, and we'll figure it out. We always figure it out, and everything is fine. But see, the thing is, yeah, and I mean, it can be frustrating, to have that kind of thing going on. But the thing is that, well, like he says, a Thetan's got to have a game or games, problems to solve, freedoms, boundaries, and purposes. If you don't have any freedoms, you don't have any boundaries, you don't have any purposes, or one of those is greater than the others, you have a game. Otherwise, that's why people who have the most money in the world are the most unhappy. There's no game because they're looking at it from the viewpoint that money brings happiness.
Right.
Money doesn't bring happiness. Beingness brings happiness.
Yeah.
That's what it's all about. What am I being?
Yeah.
So that's the goal of auditing. And I would think that if we were to summate the process, the group process that we did last week, it definitely puts you in a different state of beingness, wouldn't you say?
Yeah. Yeah. It was just beingness. Yeah.
Arthur?
Sorry, I missed all of that. I was talking to my boy.
So do you feel like you're in a different state of beingness now?
It's funny because once you see it, you can't unsee it. Yeah. And
exactly.
And I'm going to kind of go back to what I was saying before in the sense of like, okay, once you see it, something comes up and then it's a question of how do you handle that? And like, I have to say, since I started the Purif, so many doors have opened up, and this process is just another addition to that. It's like, oh my God, I've got all these things going on and I need to handle them. How do I handle them? And that's kind of where I'm at. The awareness of my own life has just illuminated. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
In such a way that I can't ignore it and I can't, pretend it's not there. I can't avoid it. Because now my awareness of how some of these things actually affect me is so strong.
Yeah,
my awareness of being affected is really present. Yeah.
Right.
And yeah.
Right.
It's interesting. And I have to say I found that process very similar to elements of the Purif as well, where the reactiveness wakes up. And it wakes up and builds up, wakes up, builds up, wakes up, builds up, and then nothing just disappears. And you're like, oh, the clarity just kicks in, just like that. But building up to that point, it's so overwhelming, and then boom, nothing. It just disappears. It just vanishes into the wisp.
Yeah, it just because you've as-ised it, and that's how it works.
Yeah. Yeah.
Did you want to say something? It looked like you had something on deck.
I was just listening intently.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, I hope this is a good bookend to the session last week, the group session, and probably should get going. We've got life livingness in the pursuit of keying outingness sessions and training and all that stuff to do on our end. And Arthur probably wants to have dinner and wrap up his day. So any closing statements before we what is it? Bounce?
Yeah. I want to know from you guys in the comments if you guys would be interested in us talking about where the brain and the mind link. So where does it begin and end? What is the brain? What is the mind? How they're different, etc. Because I'd really like to do that.
Okay. Yeah. So comment on YouTube. You can send us text messages on the website through Buzzsprout. Send us emails. Let us know. And we'd be happy to do podcasts on it. Arthur, anything from you?
Just keep educating yourselves.
Yeah, keep growing.
Yeah.
That's a constant
keep growing,
thing.
keep learning. Don't give up. Just keep pursuing.
Expand your awareness and be theta the solver, not theta the problem.
Yeah.
So for Arthur Moudakis and Scientologirl and myself, Jonathan Burke, we hope you have found this illuminating, and we will see you again day after tomorrow on Wednesday. Namaste, and we love you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.